What was this intro?
You mean I forgot the intro?
Like in chat, you were like, "Davai, davai, let's go," and here it's like Sleepy Serenade. Hello, Adrian.
Hello.
Hello.
How is you
everybody.
doing? We talk about communication today, so we need to improve that in
Yes.
order to be good.
Yes,
in
my
what we
brain's
do.
a bit mush. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy few weeks with coaching. But it's nice to see you.
Likewise. So, yes, my microphone. Let me quickly check because last time I started with the wrong one, which was somewhere in a meter away from here.
So today we have communication quality.
Yes.
Daniele is joining us in 30 minutes.
Yes.
He's going to be a hot join. He's going to be sort of a midway stream guest. We already had this conversation in one form.
Yep, that is his book. He will talk about that one. That's a good one.
In the first version of our conversation, we were discussing this more from the ground level, from a perspective of an engineer or from this engineer's immediate report. Today, we're talking about communication more from a organizational perspective, more from like a senior leadership perspective, more top-down, more strategic, less pull requests.
Yeah, so I think the topic is a little bit about how to communicate right?
Mhm.
So we talk about tech teams, and tech teams in general are mostly consistent of software developers, sometimes different person like QA people, design people, UX people, POs, PMs, all those kind of roles. But in reality, the overarching term for the people working on software, in my opinion, is software developer. So even you can develop software without programming. And I think one of the very specific things or the very unique things about this industry is how international it actually is. So I think I don't know any other industry which is so internationalized like ours is. And the more you have that, the more possible barriers you have in cultures, in those kind of things. We see that. So we are both Europeans, so we know what we're talking about, right? So even though we have a lot of neighbors, every neighbor speaks a different language. So
Yes.
it's a little bit like we are a large continent, right, with a lot of people, but I don't know, more than 30, 40 languages, something like that. And most of us are basically able to speak the main language, so the mother's tongue, the one we grew up with. And in most cases, we learned English in a way or another. So my English was very bad when I was getting out of school because English in Germany wasn't a big thing. It wasn't a thing where everyone was focusing on. So you had this so-called school English, and that was okay. It was enough to buy something in a store or have a simple conversation without using your hand just too much. But it's not like you're not able to do small talks. You're not really able to understand complex videos or something like that, and of course not a native speaker who is speaking fast and is using native terminology. So that's one of the things. So what I want to say is that communication is extremely important when we want to be successful on a broader scale. Of course, we are coaches; we need to be that anyway. But even in like German companies, when you take a look at Hamburg, Frankfurt, Berlin, or those kind of areas, you have a lot of companies where most of the people working there are actually not German speakers. So they speak German to some degree, but it is like they agree as a team, as a company, to have English as the main language.
Yes.
And that is more common than not in these cities, especially in startups, funded startups. That is a big thing. And that's the one thing. So we need to be able to speak in different languages, and the other thing is that we should be able to communicate well. That's the reason why we have later a guest who talks about that in specific. But now we talk about that in our own experience, in our own, so what we learned during a journey. And I have to say that I learned it people say in a natural way, let's say, to communicate well, but only in German. So that's what. So I
Mhm.
could do that in German. I could use my voice and the way I communicate to motivate people, to get people to do what I want from them, to narrate a story. These kind of things were very early on, because I did a lot of community stuff when I was younger. That was something I could do, but I
Mhm.
never learned it specifically. It was some habits formed by the things I did. But then when it came to English, is a whole different story, to be honest, because doing something in another language, and software engineering mostly is in English, even if you don't speak English to other people, you still, every documentation, everything you do is in English. You even write your code, your variable names, and these kind of thing, your context often, or documentation in English. That's the same on the enterprise level.
Mhm.
So that is a whole different story, to do communication well with how you pronounce things, how you clearly communicate things, how you keep things simple, subtext, all these kind of things, gestures, intentions, and these kind of things, and then in another language. And sometimes you need to switch. And that is,
Mhm.
I think, one of the most challenging things right now in our industry. Is not really the programming, even though people might think that, but I think it is actually a soft issue. Um, a not so much solved issue is how we get cultures together, and communication in companies, that not only that we are able to speak to another developer or to other teams, but have that vertical from top down, bottom up in the same way. So how can we communicate that we have a clear vision, clear mission, and everything we do as teams is aligned to a overarching mission?
Mhm.
And how can we make sure that that is actually clear, what we're going to do? And it's not only about how I speak or something like that. It is when and how often we speak. It is what do we communicate and what don't. So what do we not communicate? Because there are things which creates noise, and there are things which create signals. Yeah, that's now my what came to my mind. What I needed to dump that.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about that when you hear that?
We have a question on Substack, and we can re-ask it of Daniela in a moment. Lucian asks, related to people skills, how do you deal with brilliant assholes in your organization? Right. So people who are brilliant, smart, but assertive, direct, opinionated,
Often alpha.
cold, yes, rude, maybe lacking in kindness or warmth. How do you deal with that? Let's say that I think that is the most common expression of the absence of what you spoke of.
Do you want to answer it, or shall I?
Well, Lucian asked us. I just voiced it. It would be natural for you to sort of pick up the first round.
So we had that in the last stream where Dennis was trying to stop me a little bit in regards of that I started with a very direct framework thing. So there are, first of all, as a leadership person, and that's or management, it is not only leadership, it's management first of all. So we don't want to have enemies in our company. So if
Mm-hmm.
if a person is clearly working against the company and trying to use their own influence to do whatever is in favor of that single person, that's the extreme version right now. You should get rid of that person. That's that's not discussable, and we don't need to waste any time here.
Hmm.
In most other cases, and I think that's a rare case, but it happens. It happens actually
It does.
often. So not often, but I have it often in mentorings where
You've seen
people
it happen. I've seen it happen.
exactly,
It's it's not so rare that we wouldn't have observed it.
exactly, but it is not like everywhere and in most teams. So I would say most
Yes.
teams you can fix things.
Not every
No,
mention of this signal is this situation. But
exactly.
that's the worst thing that you immediately think of.
Exactly. So let's focus about what you can do. The first thing you should do as a leadership person, as a person who is in the role of a tech lead. So let's say that the minimum
Let's say
one
that
would
you are
be a
this
team lead.
person's boss. Let's make
Yeah,
it more concrete. You
the
are this
direct
person's.
report, right?
Yes, yes.
Exactly. So the reporting area. So what you can do in that moment is that you start to cultivate a communication or communicative culture very early on and create requirements for this culture. And I really like this idea of culture requirements, which means that you should be very open and very clear what you want and what you expect. And you
Hmm.
don't ask for it, you demand it. So we are still talking about the frame. So there is a frame. So people working together with you. So you as a manager, so engineering manager, or whatever you are in the moment, you are paying money. So you are responsible for a salary which is paid. So that's a contract. So you need to create a framework which is clear for the team how we communicate. It must be supportive. It shouldn't be top down, these kind of things, but it must be defined so that
Hmm.
there are things that we don't need to discuss with everyone and make clear for everyone. Like, hey, like this alpha person. So there's this alpha person, and you want to make a decision. You want to make a decision as a team, but the team is not making a decision because that everyone is waiting until this one single person is giving a call or not, and everyone is instead watching towards the team lead or something like that. Is watching towards that person, and that is what we need to avoid. We need to clearly state if that is something we don't like. We need to state that as a manager, and in the, let's say, in the role of a manager, but as a leadership person we need to live that, which means that we need to be present. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, that is that reports are often far away. So that really doesn't work, because it is not really about the report. So when we want to step up from the framework aspect, we need to get to the personal aspect. So we need to be able to do that by communication in order to not only motivate that person to do something more, but to make clear, here I am, I'm a role model, I'm living up to the standards,
Hmm.
I'm making sure that you are allowed to talk more than I, so active listening, right? So I present you room, but I expect that you do the same for others as well. So that is one of the first things you can do to diffuse an alpha person. So if that person is continuously not acting upon that, then we're getting back to the very first rare thing that happens. So if that person doesn't want to do that, of course, you can do a lot of things. So that is very depending on how good you're communicating, how well your character is shaped so far, so your
Hmm.
mindset. So if you break after that person had said something because you're afraid to speak up, you shouldn't be in that role. That's another point. So you need to be able to face that person. That's the fourth pillar of
Hmm.
leadership, which is
Absolutely.
challenging. So you need to be able to challenge that person and be challenged by that person.
And also to just be with them and experience them and allow them to express themselves without judgment, without taking a side. Just hear them out.
Exactly. So that's extremely important. So to
Lucian
not,
had a hold on. Lucian had a follow up.
yeah.
Isn't this leading to a fear culture? Um, so I think that was in response to you saying um, to be well. I think in response to your boldness of like
Yeah.
demanded from them.
No,
Um,
that's the very foundation. So you have a contract anyway. So there must be contracts. In some countries, they don't even need to sign a contract. As soon as you pay money and someone working, you have a contract. And that's only the contract level. So the contract
From
level should be on a level where we talk about this is the absolute foundation. We
so
don't go
let's
below.
make it simpler. Let's say that this person who might
Mhm.
be acting like this, they are fulfilling all of their contractual obligations. Let's take that off the table. They are doing their job, but they could be nicer about it.
Mhm.
I think that simplifies the conversation quite a bit.
Yeah, but
What
that
what
but
what
that
what?
isn't the question about that with a culture of fear and I
Well,
suppose.
yes, but primarily it's a strong personality, right? Like we're discussing how to deal with a strong personality, and from my perspective, what you seem confused.
Me? No, I'm not confused.
I see. Um, from my perspective, I would always try to understand whether they want to act like this, whether
Mhm.
this is done with intent, or whether this is in response to something, whether this is a symptom of a deeper issue, right? Because maybe they only communicate like this when they don't trust the room, or when they feel like their role is being diminished, or when they're being silenced, or not taken seriously, or disrespected, right? So maybe they only show this behavior when they have already perceived some kind of threat, which means that to them, they feel justified in acting like this. So as a leader, I would always aim your attention towards try to figure out whether you are unconsciously, consciously, or accidentally triggering this behavior, and in your absence it is not present. So first component, you specifically, you the leader, maybe they are rebelling towards you, or maybe they are trying to get your attention and show you that they are competent because maybe you haven't promoted them in a while, and maybe you won't promote them because of how cold they become when they become really competitive, because that is one of the
Mhm.
the alpha people, the benevolent jerks generally have this tendency of they are extremely competent and they want to be rewarded meritocratically for their competence, but you will block their promotion if they can't work as a team. And maybe they're not receptive to that feedback, or maybe you haven't been giving that
But that is a
clearly.
communication problem then.
Yes,
And there we are at the topic. So
yes.
it all comes down in the end to communication, which is more or less a leadership skill, not a management skill. So management is what we did in the beginning. We have a frame, we have a foundation, and we
Hmm.
don't. This is just a contract. We make sure everything happens inside the contract, and we have requirements for that. That's it. Everything above that is leadership. Is basically what people mostly refer to soft skills. I prefer human skills because it is
See,
it is what
I,
we have
I,
between
I,
humans.
I'm not super on board with the soft skill thing, because I think communication, listening, and actively participating in like the sticky stuff,
Mhm.
I think that's the hard stuff. I think like on some level, your your voice box, your instrument, is a much harder skill to learn and master and hone than
But
software
hard
engineering.
skill doesn't mean that is difficult. Hard skills means is the skills actually this it is a weird thing, and I'm actually not referring right now to the idea that I like soft skills, but it is referred to that because people think about that.
Because it's
And
intangible. I get it. I get
exactly,
it.
it is like
It's in that
I
sense. Yes,
personally
yes,
call
I
it
agree.
human skills because it is the
So let's
skill
call
of
it
the human.
human skills. Okay,
Okay, the
right.
human
So
skills are
agreed.
what we need to learn as humans to work with other humans together. So that's not only like a skill, like how I communicate,
Out
but
of
for
focusing.
example, how do I
Yes.
reflect myself on mistakes? How do I take myself back and let others talk? Active
Mm-hmm.
listening. When should I get active and when should I be passive?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the patterns, the subcontext, these kind of things are very hard, especially so
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of people calling themselves introverts or people calling themselves well, most people call themselves introverts because extroverts don't think like that. So I'm personally so when we take a look at the definition, I would be an introverted person because I am extremely like I'm avoiding social contact as good as possible. Seems weird, but it is like that. So I can speak on a stage with 2,000 people, no problem. But I have problem to walk towards a person and talk to that person.
Hmm.
That's a typical thing, sign of introversy. So introverts communicate differently than extroverts. Extroverts often talk too much, while introverts talk too less, which makes sense as a leadership person. To when you see that there is this, and you have that often in tech teams, that there are people not talking anything and people talking too much. And maybe the alpha person is talking more than the other person. And that is important, that we need to understand as a leadership person that we need to do something every day to cultivate a environment where this can become better, because that isn't fixed by a meeting. That is fixed and maintained like a garden. So it's more like a garden. You need to do it constantly and consistently. You need to be every day a role model, and that's important. You need to be a role model for others to understand how it is correct to be there. So you cannot be. This is a problem with engineering managers. They are often far away. And the team lead is often not a leadership person. The team lead is often a designated person who is supposed to manage a team where no management is required, but leadership. So that is often another problem. So companies don't really put much time and effort into actually helping people to become leaders. So
Hmm.
those human skills,
I
those.
mean, and generally you hire them through referrals. You don't even train them, right? So, for example, if if you have a rift in product leadership, or if you have a silo of some kind, if you have a feature factory, or if there's, usually between the triad of customer support, engineering, and product, there's usually one that is sort of less dominant, or sort of more passive towards the other two, or has less control over the resources. Um, it is very natural that these silos are expressions of the senior leaders, either inability to get along, or
Mhm.
a need for way too much structure that takes all of those human skills off the table and just replaces it with way too much process. So that there's handoffs and meetings and Jira boards rather than candid conversations
Jira and
where
Scrum are very much these kind of things. So instead of having free speech, let's say, and an area where you can get to a person whenever you need, you feel the urge that I need to wait for tomorrow for the
there's a
next sign off,
process, there's a
right?
ticket, there's an SOP, there's a document, there's a form, there's a blah 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 blah. And
That's
then before you know
sadly
it,
what we
everybody's
need.
calendar is full and you can never get hold of them outside of theater.
Exactly. And when you have that person, then this person is often stressed and doing five other things. And
And
that's
there's 9 other people in the room, so it's always difficult to get their candid response without, or giving them feedback without them losing face, so you don't do it. And then that's 90% of all the mistakes that are happening, sort of in a normal organization, right? So that you never see your most critical personnel outside of like big
Mhm.
rituals like sprint plannings, stand-ups, etc. So then all of the negative feedback either gets silenced, avoided, or voiced way too publicly and too crudely, and then that creates an environment where naturally dominant, assertive, so people with sociopathic tendencies, they start running the show because they are the most foxiest person in the chicken coop. I believe we got a ping that Daniela is joining us.
Yes. So actually, the right time. It's about the.
She's perfectly on time.
That's this book. We're talking about in a second because there's a name up there, and this guy here will join in a second. And I have prepared some questions,
Uh-huh.
not actually, but some stuff I want to go through, and let's quickly get him here first before I start to. There it is.
Ciao.
Let's get him into the middle.
Hi,
Good evening.
hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis. Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks. I'm sorry I couldn't make it earlier, but like
No, it's
previous
good.
commitments,
That
So,
You
was a
got
very
perfect timing.
spontaneous request from ours
oh,
to get you joined into that. So it wasn't planned. I updated the thumbnail today so that you
yeah.
will join. So we had a podcast together already
Mhm.
where you were inviting me, I think.
Yeah.
And you are a professional person when it comes to communication training. So which means that you understand actually what we're talking about here. So we do that. So Dennis and me probably because we learned to do that. We were basically did that on the job, and we learned things, and we reflected, and we learned over time to do things better. So you are a person who's actually teaching tech leads and software developer in specifically, so it always says easy English for IT, how to actually do that right. And to wrap it up, I don't know, I think you haven't got the first half an hour, or did you? I don't know. No, you didn't.
Nope.
Okay. And so we were talking about the problems and the issues we see in typical organizations where you often have too much system like Scrum and stand-up meetings where you wait. This was the last thing we were talking about, where you wait for your next slot to speak to someone. And the other thing was that we often have too much let's say, or often the typical alpha persons and the other persons who are too quiet. Some people are too loud because some people may feel more competent and want to be, you know, more appreciated than others,
Mhm.
the dominance problem. Then we have the problem that engineering managers and direct reports are often too far away from the actual team, so there is no real communication happen. And the other thing was what we're talking about in the very beginning, of course, that we are multi-language, multicultural.
Mhm.
That's a new thing as well, and that English became the go-to language when it comes to software development in basically every
Yeah.
country right now.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Now that was a wrap up of
Yeah.
the
Well, thanks
last
for the
30.
summary. Thanks for the summary. I really appreciate that.
Cool. So what do so when that comes to mind, what do you think about that as an introduction?
Well, of course, I agree. Meaning that I've seen all these things. I've seen them obviously during my IT experience. So I was in a large team. I was in an international team, and I was also managing a remote team. So I've seen it all. I've seen like loud people, quiet people. I've seen distant people, and that's the reality. It's the reality in an international setting, and it's the reality when you manage teams across the world. Yeah. So we can't really change that. We can only adapt and find a way to actually manage it in a way that it is effective. Yeah.
Mhm.
And now to come to the second part, this is what I still see today, obviously, with the people I work with. And we try to, yeah, can I say this expression, bridge that gap. Yeah, there is a
Mhm.
gap, and we try to, let's say, find a way around it. And yeah, so I have to agree with you, Adrian, there. And it's just to find a way to find a common language, because obviously the common language is English, but there is something beyond that. So to find a common language within the common language, yeah, if you know what I mean. So the way we communicate, the way we express our ideas, the way we, I don't know, we listen and we feedback. So all these things contribute to effective communication in tech teams. That's my perspective, right? So that's what I would say.
Mhm.
What I noticed, so we come from like a similar part of Europe, I believe. Um, one of my teams that I'm coaching right now, they have like a heavy Austrian, Italian, and Spanish influence, and you can hear the difference in tonality when two buddies speak Spanish with each other to each other in private, right? Like the nonverbal communication picks up. There's a lot more warmth, a lot more small talk, and when they switch over to English, what the
Mhm.
mutually agreed upon language that we use for all official business, let's say, um, there is something of that lost. Do you see how do you see that? Like, is that something that you would encourage to be rediscovered, brought in, reframed?
Yeah, well, first you have to, so people need to know that it's not going to be the same, right? So
Of course.
you speak your first language, and you might be a, I don't know, brilliant person, a great speaker, a nice entertainer in your first language, but you can't be the same from day one in a second language. It's just never going to happen at the beginning. But of course, what you do, you can build that up. So you, in a way, you can find your own voice in a second language, and I think that should be the target. People tell me, look, I have AI, so I can translate pretty much real time, sometimes even the voice, or which is fine, it helps us communicate. But at the same time, you will never, you cannot use AI to actually recreate you, because you need to find a way to, I don't know, to be funny in a different language.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend once told me, the moment of revelation for me was when I cracked a joke in English and everybody started laughing. So that meant, yes, I nailed it. So I am a person who loves cracking jokes, and I can finally do that in a second language. So it's just a little example, but this is what I mean. But yeah, it's true. At the beginning, it's complicated. I remember a few months ago, someone came to me saying, "Look, I am there in this team, and everybody is chatting using whatever Slack or whatever, they making jokes, and then everybody starts laughing, and I'm there, caught in the middle, left behind, the only one who's not laughing. So I have two choices: I laugh, pretending I understand; I ask them to explain it, and then it's not funny anymore; or I finally try to understand what's going on. And then we did it. So we worked on that together. We started from the chats, trying to understand the jokes, and from there, building an understanding on the culture, the language. So yeah, it's totally normal. It's totally normal. And again, it's a situation I've seen a million times. You have a large team, and then you have the like subgroups within the same team
Yeah.
of people who speak the same language. They can get along at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and then they can't stay like that forever. Otherwise, your team is never going to be a team. So yeah.
So you have written about that stuff quite a lot. After I've bought and read your book, which is great. So I'm just having pages open here right now. So you have said that. I like how you pointed it out. Like you say that clear articulation, effective vocabulary, active listening skills, confident and diversified tone, body language, culture sensitivity, effective written communication, and feedback. You just said that is a different thing in English than in your native language, and I really can say that. I think most people can clearly articulate in their main language. They have effective vocabulary because you learned it as a child already. Active listening skills. Well, this is another thing, but let's say a diverse or a confident tone. In your mother's language, you don't think about too much about language. You just do that. While in English, you need to, when you switch to English and you're not a native English speaker, you need to think about what you say, especially in the beginning. Later on, it works, but that's the thing. Body language as well. What I see often is when people speak English and it's a second language, then the body language sometimes is even freezing or heavily articulating. It's like because there's stress. There's like that's not natural. It's not like the gestures aren't following a natural flow. It's more like it tries to support you somehow to get what you want, right? So that's what I see. The culture sensitivity, it is like an aspect as well is people are very friendly when they speak all in their second language, and what I see often is people are less friendly and more direct in their speaking when they use their mother's tongue. That's definitely a change. So that's what I see in LinkedIn as well. When I see it comments, German comments are when Germans talk to other Germans, it is rude sometimes. Let's say that. It's pretty much the same with British people. But as soon as it becomes internationalized and people sense this is international now, people stop doing that. That's very interesting. And I see the very same thing in tech teams as well. So when people speak in teams like your meeting, I mentor a lot of CTOs who have that issue that they have internationalized teams, time zone problems, but this is not the main issue. The main issue that people sitting together basically say nothing.
Yeah.
They don't want to say something because it is hard for them to explain their ideas. They might have something in mind, but they try to, maybe the other can talk about that. So maybe it is this hesitance, reluctance, being passive. Dennis, do you see the same in your coaching? So you're coaching in
I think, yeah. So I interface usually with entire teams and sort of try to figure out how they're communicating or not communicating with their stakeholders, and how to help them find their own voice or their own identity, or what's suppressing it. Because often it is a combination of these things.
True.
What I often find is that remote teams especially lack a social construct, a sort of non-work mode of speaking, right? So they're used to just 90% of their time talking about work stuff. There's a meeting, and the meeting has a natural order of speaking. It has a leader who called the meeting, and they will be running the meeting. Maybe somebody's facilitating, maybe somebody's seniority, and the seniority, the rankings, the social ladder will sort of supersede itself over the conversation and sort of mute or even silence, suppress natural, joking around, small talk, just very light social discourse. And I'm wondering what your view on this, of how to nurture this into a team or train it, or what needs to be removed so that it can express itself naturally.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I suppose we can break it down into different parts, different sub questions, right? So the first part would be, okay, being in a meeting and trying to express yourself, and then we go back to the part that Adrian was mentioning, so like the intonation, the rhythm, the body, all these things that you learn you learn naturally in your native language, but you don't necessarily learn them in a second language, right?
It's misadapted.
Exactly. So, but it doesn't always work. Like, for example, your native gestures might not work in English, or might not be well received. And as an Italian, I know, right?
Whoa, yes,
yeah, exactly. But it doesn't really work. Yeah. But one thing that I say is that we take language courses. So why don't we learn that part along together with the language itself, right? So in my opinion, it makes sense to learn the grammar, but learn like the intonation that goes with it. Yeah. So how do you pronounce a certain word? What's the stress? How do you use your pitch? Okay. So how do you use your hands when you want to explain something, And so you you learn language as a whole in a way, not like in silos. So grammar, and then vocabulary, and then eventually pronunciation, and if you're like intonation and rhythm, they all need to go together, in my opinion, right? And so this is to answer your question, Adrian. So my view is that we should take a step back and learn a new language as we would learn like something, as a whole, really. So language is words, is gestures, is intention, intonation. So that's the sort of learning path that I think is effective.
It sounds like we are coming closer, though, to public speaking, rather than just the function of the language.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a meeting, you are doing public speaking. If you are if you are presenting, you're doing public speaking. If even if you are in a one-to-one with your manager, it's public speaking in a way, because you are not on your own, so you want to be effective, and you want to be sure what you say and how you say it, and at the same time build up that awareness on how that will be received. Okay. And now to come to your part of the question, Dennis. So I believe that social part is very important. And typically in tech teams, what you have is people who can read, understand documentation. They know all the tech words. They know the language of tech, of
The
course.
jargon, the technical details,
Exactly,
which
because
are almost computer oriented, not even for a human, but for a compiler.
exactly. But we are familiar with that, so it would be pointless, for example, from a teaching perspective, to teach those words or to spend too much time. You just need to, again, bridge the gap again. So what goes like between the tech words? And it's the relationship part. So spend some time, for example, in social skills and small talk, or spend some time on sounding natural and connecting, so finding a common ground and speaking like you mean it. So it's not like, okay, I speak because I want to get to my point, and that's it. So very blunt, very direct. No, you speak like you want to engage in a conversation, so you listen, and so you absorb the feedback, you elaborate, and then you're able to I don't know, to express your own version of it and then absorb it again. So you make it a two-way, right? And it could be like very simple, like talking about the weather, the famous example. Yeah, I know it's silly, I know it sounds stupid, but in many cultures is the best way to connect and to start a conversation, really.
Icebreaker.
Exactly. You break the ice. Like you go to Ireland, and it's really easy to break the ice by talking about the weather. It works, and people usually reply, and then that's the start of a conversation, really. So in a way, yeah, so you get those social skills that I think are really valuable, especially in the tech world, right, where everything is technology, AI, and coding. You need a bit more of that, just to interact and to connect.
And very goal oriented rather than exploratory, even in conversation.
Yes, exactly. That's absolutely it. So you don't always have a goal when you have a conversation, right? It's just interested in the other person, typically.
Because that builds up, let's say, the foundation, or the culture, actually, where people then later get back to you because it's okay to speak to you, right? So it's this is this typical problem with the open door policy. There is this door, but this door is basically a barrier, and you put a barrier and you say you need to go through the barrier, but you can't do that every time. So instead of saying there is no barrier, just talk to me whenever you feel like. So even if I'm working on something, it's totally normal. I expect you to just interrupt me talking to me, while I could do the same when I have issues. So we form a team. So we work on the same thing, not on different things. So we are one unit, right? And
Yeah.
that you need to cultivate from both sides. So if one person creates an environment where it's a little bit like the feeling, the subcontext suggests that don't speak to me, I actually don't want to speak, I just want to do my work. That's very bad if you do that, because people won't talk to that person if it's not necessary, right? And if it's necessary, it feels bad. And at some point, it actually can clash, because we say, hey, we have a problem here, we need to talk, and then it basically bursts out, instead of having that in a fluent conversation where you actually talk about the issues. Instead, you talk about the issue between you and the other person.
Yep. And there's also an added benefit, because if you're open to, let's say, being interrupted, or if you're open to explaining things, or even to engage in a casual conversation, you slowly but surely become the go-to person, and so people start trusting you, and people start even like relying on you in a way, and then the voice spread, and you become like a natural leader in a way. because you develop that social aspect that that needs to be there. So it's another benefit. And then, when there's a leadership opportunity or when you're ready for it, you have already built up the skills that you need, because you know how to communicate, you know how to explain things, and you know that people trust you. So you build your own confidence there. So yeah.
That's extremely important. So that was I think 1 or 2 weeks ago. That was my main topic about leadership, was communication and how you narrate stories, how you basically tonality. These kind of things are so important because people need to remember you as a person who is willing and able to communicate, and who is, where the people are allowed to talk to, and that there's of course a role model in the same moment, so people will become the same. And the more people doing that in a team, the more interaction you will have. So if no one is actually a role model for communication, then you basically try to only do it in Slack, right? So we talked about 1 or 2 years ago with Dennis about GatherTown. It's a basically, or Gather right now. It's basically a Slack version, like a mini game where you can run around to a desk of someone else and just start talking. So everyone does have, let's say, some kind of simulation there. You always have your headphones on, the
I
microphone.
use it with a lot of my teams. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it is a way to bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah.
If your team, and that's a good litmus test, is like, if your team is willing to use something like that and is open to use that, you don't have much communication issues. But if your team says, no, but this person could talk to me to any time, what's that, right? I need to be prepared. We need to make a meeting in 3 days for that. So if you have that, you have definitely an issue in your team. So how would
But
you?
but you can have these issues as well without GatherTown. Like, it's just one of a medium that sort of changes.
It eases the remote first issues in
Yeah.
time zones. Time zone issues is still something because people are simply not there.
Yeah.
But when you would see that issue, and people stay with Slack, and from time to time, when you're lucky, some people have good connection. They huddle or cuddle, or how is it called? Huddle, I think. It's cuddle is what.
You do that later.
Okay, the color is another part. Huddle. But you have occasional huddles, but you want to get to actually having desks where people working as pairs together, even on the same issue. How do you get teams from the defensive, I want to be alone in isolation, be there in my basement, and how to get them to the actual? So what would be your steps for other CTOs and team leads to do in order to improve the situation?
Is that for Dennis or for me, Adrian?
Actually, whoever wanted to do that, right?
Feels like we took 2 steps in one direction, and I would prefer one first.
Which one?
Wait, so Daniela, you're discussing sort of the natural cadence of conversation and how somebody's second language does not transfer over the same level of diction as their primary language, and then there's all that extra detail when it comes to jargon and technical ability. And Adrian, you're coming at it more from this perspective of engineers are engineers because they like machines more than they do people. So this is going to be a natural blind spot for a lot of people. So this is for a senior leader, a head of something. It is going to be a natural consequence that they will have to somehow encourage more communication than is naturally there. Plus, perhaps helping volume control that one loud person who is clear outlier in the team, right? So we had a question already at the beginning, which is how do you deal with a benevolent jerk? But I think it's more important to answer the question of what can the leader do when it comes to just language, let's say, when they are facing 10 very passive, silent, self-proclaimed introverts in their team. So do you see a bridging there that your field might be useful for? Did you see any happy accidents, happy sort of discoveries about people's confidence going up when they do these kinds of trainings? Or what have you seen have positive effects? But
Right. Yeah.
from your experience, like we don't need to be theoretical if
Yeah.
you
Yeah. I mean,
prefer.
it is challenging, of course, because you have these people who, yeah, they tend to be isolated, and that's challenging because as a leader, you struggle to manage such a situation. I don't know. One thing that's supposed, like, I suppose could work is to try to put people out of context, right? So put them in a situation which is not so safe anymore.
Could you give us an
Uh,
example?
okay, so to give you an example, right? Many years ago, I won a raffle at work. They gave me a voucher for the canteen, right? So I could buy some food. Instead of buying food for myself, I make some calculations, decided to buy ice cream for the team members, right? But the condition was that everybody had to log off and come to the garden
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy the ice cream. So first thing, that nobody can say no to ice cream. It's just
Yeah.
you have to, like, if it's free ice cream, you just have to have it.
Hey,
But
I know a vegan or two.
yeah, true. Well, but they had vegan options. They had really, like, it was it was impossible to say no. The only condition was that you couldn't have it at your desk. You had to go to the
Mhm.
garden where the whole team would
It had to
meet.
be a
Okay.
social affair.
And everyone brought the
Exactly.
laptop and continued working online.
Yeah, exactly. But no, because the laptops were chained to the desk. Well, okay, of course I didn't take the, but like, it was impossible. So you had to go there and somehow socialize, at least with me, because I had to
Mhm.
go to the canteen manager just to say, okay, yes, this guy is entitled to an ice cream, or this lady can have the ice cream, etc., etc. So basically, that was the start of the interaction. And then, everybody was sitting there, and you know, they had to somehow communicate. There was the light, so the situation was different, and everybody looked completely different. Like, you could see people at their desk, they looked in a way, but there they were sitting. So one was sitting like slouching, the other was sitting more in a, I don't know, in an uncomfortable position. Then it gave me an opportunity to, yeah, break the ice and then, start a conversation. And you could see that people, I don't know, they looked more familiar. They were making like jokes, things so serious previously in the work setting. So getting everyone out of context really helped,
Mhm.
and yeah, of course, it's not the solution, but
Mhm.
surely it's part of the solution. So
Mhm.
get people out of their comfort zone. uh, Something very simple like an ice cream, going outdoor, is very simple, it's
Mhm.
not doing anything
Ice
like.
cream breaker.
Exactly. You see, you're getting the idea, right? Ice cream breaker. So it's not like going paintballing or these crazy things that is over team building. It's something very basic,
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
get them out of context. So that's one thing that usually worked. And and I say, like, another thing would be to, I don't know, to plant a seed. So to say something again out of context. So you are at work, but you can also talk about something different. So tell
Mhm.
people, like, I don't know, yeah, this is my favorite drink is, and people go like, well, why do I need to hear that? Just because. And then, you plant a seed and maybe it could start a conversation. So
Mhm.
that's, I think it's one way that you could use. Obviously, you have to work hard to earn your team's trust, but at the same time, you need to get them out there. You need to get them to put themselves out there a bit more.
Mhm.
And even in a meeting, you can create those opportunities. You could create these 5-10 minutes where you do something totally different. Like, I don't know, yeah, present something, introduce your favorite football team, for example. Like, you know something stupid, but again.
What's your main demographic for all of this? Like, now that you're mentioning these examples, I'm thinking, that sounds more like an older audience, rather than the newest generation. So I'm curious, is there a certain leaning that maybe the younger generation is more English savvy, even if it's not their primary language? Is there something like that happening? And are you working now with?
So obviously, when I'm talking about my team, I'm talking about a few years ago when I was in corporate and I was leading teams. Right now, yeah, I see, of course, younger people are a bit, yeah, they're a bit more familiar with English.
Mhm,
Though they, again, the social part, it's still there at play, right?
mm,
Because in the tech world, you're exposed to English a lot,
yeah.
but you don't necessarily interact. There's a
Mm,
few people who have great exposure. So people who are into gaming, of course, so they might be on Discord and be used to these conversations, but not everybody, you know.
mhm,
So, and even there, people get used to this very informal English,
mhm,
which is not always useful when you want to transition into a corporation. So you
yes.
need to you find again we're
Mhm.
back to what we said earlier. So to find your tone, your voice, your language, so adapt to different situations.
Mhm,
So obviously the work you do is different, right? Because with an older person might need to find the skills to interact, to be more social. With a
mhm,
younger person, you need to maybe refine a bit the language and understand the difference between informal and formal. So
mhm,
informal is not always good, especially in an international environment, whereas formal is not always the best when you are with your colleagues. Okay,
mhm,
so that's the sort of work that, and that's the difference that I see anyway.
mhm.
You said in your book, hack your English. Explain that, please. 1 second. There it is. No, it doesn't focus. There it is.
Yeah, it
Hack
does.
your
Yeah,
English.
accurate English. Exactly, exactly. I
I
mean,
really
we are in tech, right? So we hack things here. And yeah, I don't know. It came from, obviously, you know, we all know where it comes from. But I love acronyms. It might be something that I have inherited from my corporate years. I don't know, but hack means find a way. Okay, the positive meaning of hack. Find a way to crack the system, to get there, right? And hack is an acronym that stands for hone, action, collaboration, and kudos, right? And basically, it creates this framework where you reverse the order you normally do things. So normally,
Mhm,
you know, you study grammar, vocabulary, and then when you feel ready, you start speaking. This is slightly different. So yes, you hone your skills, but not only vocabulary, grammar. You hone your social skills as well. And how you do that? You take action. So hone action. So it means you put yourself out there. You can prepare something to say in a meeting, or if you don't have the opportunity, you record yourself. You know. So anything you can do really to get into action. Put yourself in front of a camera and speak.
mhm,
Give yourself a task like 2 minutes to talk about a specific topic. So you timer in front of a camera, right? And the topic could be really basic, like describing your room or opening the window and describing what you see. It's very basic. But you speak 2 minutes non-stop without filler words and about a simple topic in front of a camera, right? It's hard,
mhm.
but it's the closest thing to public speaking that you can ever do. And so
I've
that's
done
the
that for
second part.
years.
Yeah, see, so you're doing it, man. So it's
Mm.
hone, action, and then C is for collaboration. So you don't need to do it alone. Like we live in an interconnected world, so you can find a community, you can find someone and ask for feedback. You can find a coach. You know, you can get the essential part is that you get feedback and that you sort of share the burden. Yeah,
Mhm,
so you don't self isolate you when you need to learn, when you need to improve, to hone your skills. And finally, the case for kudos, because you have to give yourself kudos for doing it, for making the effort. Yeah, so
mhm,
you're doing something great, you are learning a new language, you are working in a new language, it's not something that everybody does. So you have to give yourself kudos, not only for your wins, like, I don't know, hey, I got that job, I'm great. Well, yeah, of course, that's a great one. But even before, like every day, oh, I've recorded myself, that's great. Or actually, I raised my hand during the meeting and I
Mhm.
said whatever I wanted to say. I had that nice conversation with my colleague, you know. I was not only on Slack, I also had a phone call. Ooh, what's that? You know.
Mhm.
So give yourself kudos for all these little things because they pile up. And eventually, when you look back, you say, oh, I've done all these things and I feel different already. So through honing your skills, taking action, collaborating with others, and giving yourself kudos, you sort of reverse, you flip the approach, and you start communicating first and then leveling up as you go. That's why you hack it in a way. Yeah.
Uh, Dennis, when you join a team as a coach, how much of your time is actually going into the things that Daniele is actually talking about?
I think this latter part that you just mentioned, Daniele, about speaking to your coworker, sending a message, sending a voice message rather than text message, recording something rather than sending a text, speaking up about something. I think that's 90%. Like it's there almost every day. Um, I'm not seeing, and in a way I miss the social aspect of it. Um, I think I work. I mean, I'm biased. I work with um, mostly remote teams who have some organizational issue. Otherwise, they wouldn't need my help. So there is that bias. Like I can't get away from it. I can only be aware of it. Um, but I think that social aspect is definitely lacking. Most often enough for me to notice its absence. Um, but fundamentally, one on one with everybody, overwhelmingly with everybody that I work with,
Mhm.
it is that notion of I don't feel heard, or there's something really important that I have to say and I don't say it. And specifically with Italians and people from Romania, they have when they speak English with an accent, they have um, a tendency, if not trained or if not conscious of it, they have a tendency to finish their sentences with an upwards inflection. So they appear as if they're asking when they're really making a statement, and that can sort of undermine their confidence, especially with a more natural, either with a natural English speaker or with somebody who is very well versed in the language, or somebody who is speaking English with a British accent or a an American accent. So it's those elements I immediately pick up on because it's it's fixable, right? So it's not something that's like an ingrained part of your personality. You're probably just not aware of it, and it's so easy to adjust, train, just get their awareness to it, and then let them play. If you use their voice, their mouth as as an instrument that they are then they're then rediscovering essentially.
Yeah.
So that it's a good question. I think it's every person is unique, so I can't really. I'm trying to find a pattern, but there isn't really one. But everybody has something about how they show up that they are self-conscious about, and there's usually trainable skills that they think is just ingrained in them and it'll never improve, and it's just who they are, right? There's a lot of that's just who I am, and every time I do this,
Mhm.
people don't listen to me, right? So there is an aspect of confidence, of believing in yourself, and a curiosity, I dare say even appetite for trying out new things, for play. um, so as much as I can, Daniele, I wholeheartedly vouch for your mission, like what you're doing in teams, because IT teams, I suppose, IT teams, accountants, finance, these are natural sort of breeding grounds for these kinds of dysfunctions, for these kinds of missed opportunities.
Yeah, I mean it's there, and I'm glad Christian appreciate the kudos part. We all love it, and it has to be there because otherwise, whatever you do, it's just not effective if you never reward yourself. And it's true, the thing you mentioned, Dennis, about the intonation, the music, even of the language. This is why I invested so much time in my book just to go through that, because when you say something, if you don't say it with the right intonation, the right intention, it just doesn't come across as you wanted it to be, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the whole thing in English about rising intonation, declining intonation, flat intonation. It's not just a nice to have, it needs to be there because your message can be received in many different ways, you know.
Mhm.
It's always like rising for question, declining for assertiveness, you know. There is a reason why we call it like that. um so yeah, so definitely they are trainable, and definitely you should invest time.
Mhm.
It's not only, you know, you learn the words, learn how to say those words, you know. That's what I would say.
What I can say, Adrian, to sort of expand on Daniela just gave me, you just gave me some ideas. Well, what I can say is that when I'm working with senior leaders or executives, um, what is noticeable is that usually, I mean, if I catch wind of their presence being, let's say, of either bad quality or inconsistent quality, right? So sometimes they have good lighting on their camera, sometimes they have bad lighting, sometimes their voice is clear and loud and bold and confident, and sometimes the, I don't know, the washing machine is going on in the background, right? So it might not just be their voice, but it might be the conditions under which they're working might be impacting their state of mind, their confidence, their posture. With every single individual, no, but when it comes to public speaking for senior leadership, for executives, I do put extra attention on all those little details, to dot all the I's and to cross all the T's, just to help them be consistent. And so if they, because they are the most visible person in the room, people will be modeling them, especially if it is positive, to just have, to just be a Christmas tree of, if people are gonna steal some random snacks from the tree, just be sure that it all makes sense, and that it is always available fairly to everybody, so that they show up the same way, the camera setup is the same, they speak the same, they use the same words. And some leaders usually have these like tics. They might have a certain cadence to the meeting. They might have 30 minutes of small talk and then rush, 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 or they will immediately jump into the meeting and say, "Oh yeah, yeah, good morning, good morning. We already
We
started."
have 5 minutes
And
left.
then they
Let's
have
talk about the action topic.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Right. So that I am conscious of with more, let's say, with people in the organization who have more of a PR function, even if it's internal, even if it is putting a face on the product engineering function or putting a face on difficult negotiations or prioritization. I always say that, hey, if we're gonna spend 10 hours writing the freaking roadmap, let's spend 10 minutes also practicing how you will voice it, how you will present it, how what we can change about your tonality, where we maybe start off a little bit softer
Yeah,
and then start boldly and
yeah,
then
you can't
soften,
risk it, you
right?
know.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Good. That was a great conversation. I would say we come to an end because we are a little bit over time already. So,
I'm late for dinner, so
Danielle, Wait a second. I'm sorry. I thank you so much for joining us. It was very interesting and enriching our
Pleasure.
conversation. Definitely. Again, recommendation for his book. It's a great one. I really like it. It is very structured, so it's a good read. So it's not like a big one, but a very structured one. No blah blah, just the points you actually need to know about. That's great. I really like
Thanks,
that.
man.
And I recommend as well, Dennis, if you need a team coach, because that is what I see so often, that people lack the ability. So I see that in priority, I'm a mentor person. So I mentor leads, right? So helping them to become better in what they do. But what I see often is they don't really translate that so often into teams, where you often need someone in the team to actually help people. That is what Dennis is doing. And this is why I recommend to follow him specifically in his blog and crafting tech teams, these kind of things, because that is very interesting and oftentimes a missing piece. I just wanted to give a shout out to you both. That's the point, because that is something so valuable. What you can see here when people talk about that for the audience right now, that we actually can learn those things, we can improve, but we need to understand how. And sometimes it's good to have someone helping you instead of try to figure out everything on your own, because it takes years, sometimes decades, to actually master it. Otherwise, it can really condense the time you actually need to do that. Okay, thank you very much. Any last words from your side, guys?
Adrian, you just made a quick pitch. You have been recently doing a rebranding. You've been going away from the Snackable CTO brand to more towards Adrian builds and similar approaches. You started mentoring again recently. Can you tell us real quick about that? About your journey?
My journeys.
Journeys.
So the
Plural.
typical neurodivergent person is on the multiple journeys at the same time. That's one of the issues.
Oh no.
No, so I am a person who is building things. So I'm building PageBuy, I'm building other products, I'm building blogs, these kind of things. So I consider myself as a builder person, and I think I haven't found my final way yet, to be very honest. I think Snackable CTO is a good idea, but it's about CTO. And I'm not doing primarily CTO content anymore. And it would be a lie if I would do that. It's not the case. So I'm doing more like founder content, leadership content, and a little bit about stoicism in leadership right now, because that's the way how I practice it myself. So I write about it as part of my practice. This is where I can invite you as well to join. I just started a publication about this, but primarily starting from next Tuesday, I do mentoring and coaching again, especially for tech leads, in specific, to actually become a better leader yourself, to start help others. So it is a different area than Dennis is basically specialized in, who's helping teams directly. I'm helping persons to become better and to actually start to be able to be a good leader. That's what often lacking. So that's the reason why stoicism is a big aspect of that, which is totally misunderstood in our industry. Okay, that's it. So I just don't want to waffle too much. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. We had several people on several channels today, 7 channels.
Yes, very generous audience today. A lot of questions from
Nice.
Substack. Daniela, thank you as well for
Absolutely.
for hopping in, making the time, and for delighting us with
Yeah,
the
such a
conversation.
pleasure, guys. It was nice. And when you don't prepare things, they come up really good. So yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I prefer that it was unprepared and unscripted.
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot.
Then see you, everyone. See you next Wednesday.